Hello again, everyone. We're back here to do part 3 of the Coach Richie Bell interview, except we're going to change it up a little bit, and we're going to speak now with Richard Altobelli III, who I will call Coach Bell. He's continued the legacy from his grandfather, who we will talk about, to his father, to himself, all of whom attended Pelham High School, were really good athletes, but I'll leave all that up to Coach Bell. Coach Bell, I'm glad you're here. Tell us what it was like growing up with a dad like your dad, and of course, the star of our show, Richie Bell, who is now 90 years young. We've done 2 parts with him. Just want to give it to you. Tell us what it was like growing up here in Pelham with both of them.
Oh, thank you, Steve. This will be a good topic to talk about. Growing up in Pelham with my father and my grandfather, it was a lot of days at the shop. They both worked right next door to each other, a wine shop and a produce store. So I spent a lot of time coming down and seeing them here. But when we did get a chance to kind of go out, as a family, it was mostly to sporting events. My grandfather and father being sports junkies. We went a lot to my grandfather's softball games. He sponsored teams here in Pelham for recreation. We went to Glover Field, and we went to the field in Mount Vernon by the Ice Hutch and a couple other places, and we watched plenty of softball. And my father would take me to the softball games too, but he also coached rec basketball, where I got a chance to go see him at Pelham High School in Mount Vernon. I remember one time even going to see him coach at Monsignor Scanlon, which I ended up playing at years later, so that was cool. So we spent a lot of time at the fields and the courts, just watching sports, me getting a chance to see them coach, talk with players. I kind of learned a lot about who people were in Pelham through that too, because, after the game, I got a chance to sit with some of the players because they would, hang out after games and stuff and talk. And I got an opportunity to pick their brain about sports and, just what it was like to be a part of Pelham and, I guess to play for my grandfather and father. So I was blessed to, see a lot of sports as a kid. And that's something I really, cherished and thought was really important to our family. Everybody else in my family, too, is into sports. My Uncle John, who is the farmer, he coached a little bit with his daughter. My Aunt Lois, who, we don't ever think of as the athlete, she was a cheerleader at Iona. I know she played a little sports in high school at Pelham. She was a cheerleader at Pelham. My cousin Amy, who, is my age and a year older, she was a softball player at Pelham. Wow. So, our family has a lot of sports. My brother also played soccer and lacrosse at Pelham and graduated in 98. So our family, it was a lot of sports growing up, no matter if we were playing or coaching or watching.
So tell us now about your involvement. Obviously, you were influenced by both your dad and your granddad. But you also wound up at Pelham High School. You were an athlete like your father and your grandfather. Tell us a little about your time at Pelham High School and even analogize it to their time, because I know you all played a bunch of sports.
So for me, going to basketball games with my father, the recreation ones and the ones he used to take me all the time to Rice High School. My grandfather used to take me, to see his teams play recreation. So, I grew up a lot around basketball and softball. By the time I got to school, elementary school, I was playing CYO basketball. I played for the last St. Catherine's team here in Pelham because St. Catherine's didn't really have a gym and they weren't really having teams. And then I ended up playing for OLPH, so that was good. So I played basketball, and then they didn't have tackle football here in Pelham. They had no youth program in, let's say, 93, 94, 95. Wow. So I didn't get a chance to play that, so I played flag football, which was awesome. I never really picked up the baseball part. I played a little bit of little league, maybe a year or two in middle school, but then I decided that I just really wanted to focus on football and basketball. So I got an opportunity to play in high school, JV and varsity for both football and basketball. I was a captain for the JV basketball team, a captain for the varsity basketball team, my 10th grade year, my 12th grade year. I had an opportunity as a football player to go to the playoffs with my senior team in Pelham. The football program wasn't always remembered as a great program, so it was kind of an honor to be able to go to the playoffs that year. And, after high school, I played 1 year at Lehman College. Basketball in school and college was a little tough for me, so I never got a chance to really fulfill that. So I ended up just playing 1 year, and then I stopped playing basketball and just focused on my studies. But I got a chance to play a lot of sports in high school and even pickup sports. I mean, my father had a stickball team that he sponsored.
Wow.
So I had a chance with my buddies, we had all the bats and the balls and everything around. We used to play on weekends, aluminum stick ball bats, which is really unheard of, burnt tennis balls because it was the new wave of the future. And then we also used the old school wooden ones in the Spaldings, but we got opportunities to play sports whenever we wanted. So that was a great opportunity about Pelham.
So you decided to follow in the footsteps of your dad and granddad and become a coach.
Yeah.
And also wound up at Pelham High School. Tell us about that.
So yeah, my grandfather, he was a Pelham rec coach, and he coached for the Dons, and he coached in a couple other tournaments. So basketball was very important to him. My father coached recreation basketball and was just obsessed with basketball. So my good buddy Artie Vigiano, who's a great name in Pelham also, someone who I went to school with since Hutch Elementary School, he became the varsity head coach and of football. And he said, would you like to coach football at Pelham? I said, that's a no-brainer. I said, absolutely, I'd love to give back. So I became part of the JV and varsity football program. And about 5 years ago was my first year, 2016. And then after that first season, we did pretty well. There was an opening for the JV basketball job. And I said, wow, I would love to even just interview for that. And Mark Finnegan, who was my varsity coach, who was still coaching at the time varsity, which was interesting, 15, 16 years out of school, and he's still the coach. Yeah. He said, would you like that job? I said, yeah, I would love that job, coach, as I call him. And he said, well, go in and have an interview with, Mr. Luciana, Steve Luciana, the athletic director at the time, and, see how it goes. So I went in for the interview, and the next day I got the phone call back, and I was the JV basketball coach. So now I'm coaching 2 sports at Pelham High School in my first year, and I couldn't believe it. And, it's really a good thanks to my grandfather and father. All the talks, all the conversations, all the visuals, all the me picking their brains and asking them things. And I knew that them being coaches, I was getting some really great information from them, and then getting the opportunity to coach at Pelham, which I think was really both of kind of their dreams. My grandfather always said he would have loved to coach at Pelham High School. So... And then after that, the athletic director said, what do you do in the spring? I said, I don't know. I'm a teacher. I don't really do very much. I teach and then I come home. He goes, well, if you're interested in baseball, we have an opening for the modified baseball team. So long story short, I interviewed for that and I got the job. And now I coach 3 sports at Pelham High School. So
that's just
it's a real honor.
So Coach Bell, give us a little background on your dad. I know he passed away a while ago, which is obviously very sad. But tell us about him, his effect in the lineage, if you will, of your granddad to your dad to you. Just give us some flavor about what he was like and his involvement in Pelham sports.
Absolutely. So something that's great is my father went to Pelham High School 68 to 71. So my father and my grandfather and myself, we were all 3 Pelham graduates, which is a pretty big thing. My grandfather graduated in 50, dad in 71, and me in 2001, which is really awesome. So, I was born in 83, and, probably towards the late 80s when I became 5, 6, I started to understand what was going on. I met a lot of my dad's friends, and it was all guys he played sports with, or guys that he was coaching. So, my first initial understanding of my dad was he was very into sports and very into coaching. He also loved helping people. He coached recreation basketball teams. He had his own stickball team he sponsored. He was constantly giving to children any donations. So he was really, really into helping out people. By the time I was 10, he started to put me on some OLPH, CYO basketball team and recreation basketball teams. And he really wanted me to get into basketball. So he was always talking to me about basketball, watching basketball with me at nights when he came home from work, because he worked here in the shop with my grandfather working next door, and he worked Monday through Sunday. He was here almost 9 to 9.
Wow. So
he was a lot of hours in the shop. So really, I only got him for a little time late at night, or Sundays sometimes when the store would close a little early. But he was really fun to be around. The guys my friends loved to be around him. All his athletes would come here and talk to him. Kind of like therapy sessions. We would joke around, they would talk to him about life and sports and their children. And, my father was always good about giving his best advice to people and what he thought, would help them in situations. So he really loved helping people. He was a jokester. I mean, he made people laugh. He's probably the funniest person in our family. I'm definitely going to say that. And he was just a joy to be around. And like I said, I think taking from my grandparents and my family, he just taught me to make sure you help people and kids and, as much as you can. So that's something I really always took from my father, and I thought was the best aspect of my father.
Fabulous stuff. Let's switch gears a little. Tell us about, I know next door at what used to be the produce shop, I guess, which is now like a trophy homage to your grandfather. There's a lot of trophies about the Don Bosco tournaments. Tell us about those, because I know they were highly talented. He talked about it. Your granddad talked about it a little bit. You know, great players coming from all over. Tell us your memories of that. I know you were very young in the '80s, and what you know about the Don Bosco tournament.
So yeah, my grandfather used to talk about these tournaments called the Dons, and I really didn't understand what it was. He started explaining to me like Don Bosco, and I think it was from Portchester. It was out of Portchester. I know there was a couple other Don Boscos, but the one he spoke about was out of Portchester. And I know that they had a lot of basketball tournaments there, so I always heard about them. But, you know, he would say names that I really didn't know. You know, I didn't always know all the names, but I know some of the names he used to say. You know, Dean Meminger, and he used to watch games with Lou Alcindor. But then he also had his local guys. He had Lowe's Moore from Mount Vernon who played for him, a couple other Mount Vernon basketball players. You know, a plethora of athletes that played for him. And he said the Dons was probably one of the best basketball tournaments they had in New York. And players would come from all around and play on these teams. And, you know, he's had times when he's won the tournament where you see the trophies are in there. There's 70s, there's some from the 80s, which is, I guess, a beautiful thing to win. But he said just the players, the type of players you saw there. And, he, you know, very different from nowadays, because now you don't have NBA players, let's say, playing in many tournaments outside of their NBA contract. That's not really a safety thing. But years back then, they wanted to play as much basketball as they could. So you could get, you know, Division I college players or some NBA pros that would want to play in these tournaments, and they would come showcase their talent. And it was just a beautiful way of them interacting with the people in the community. And my grandfather was lucky, I guess, to coach those, and he shared a lot of stories about it. So it was fun to hear about that.
So we're wrapping up here with Coach Richie Bell. Give us your final thoughts on the legacy. To me, it's just incredible. Your granddad got out of the Korean War in 1953, started the Pelham Little League, which is still going strong, and we're almost 70 years later. So just give us your final thoughts on the legacy from your granddad to your dad to you.
So I think, you know, my grandfather being born in 31, we're in 2021, so in about another 10 years, you know, our family's been here 100 years in Pelham. I think that we've developed a pride in taking care of this town. I think that, you know, we developed a real pride and importance of taking care of people and the kids of this community, and, you know, even disabled, you know, people, because my grandparents did all those programs with those people. So I think a legacy for our family is that we make sure we take care of the people where we live. And I think that we have different opportunities, whether it's teaching, it's coaching, it's our business, where we can get out and really help people. So I think that's the legacy that we want to have here as an Altobelli family in the town of Pelham.
Coach Bell, thanks very much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.